Okay, guys, welcome to our compliance conversations in the midst of COVID-19, hosted by ILSA and Spot On Insurance.
So good to see you guys.
Today, we're going to be covering corporate formation changes and DBAs. Arleen?
First of all, thank you guys for being here. I love doing this because I get to see people. Obviously, that background back there is fake, but kind of where I would like to be.
I think we'd all like to be there.
We could see the ocean from where we are, but we cannot go near the beach. So just to remind those that have not been here before, these sessions are 1 hour. We have made time so that we can hang out with you guys afterwards. If you guys want to just, keep the conversations going, we're more than happy to do that. Everyone's mics as you're coming in are muted, but however, later on, if you want to ask a question, you can just unmute it and, just ask your question and also just chat. Also, you can go ahead, there's a chat on down below and you can chat your, send your question in and we'll have our chat manager address those questions.
Okay, our masters of ceremony today, we've got Russ Foster, General Manager for ILSA, Kristy Starling-Roberts, she's the manager of our licensing department, Stephanie Cantu, the supervisor of ILSA's licensing department, Sabrina Slater, our annuals and corporate manager, and Tamika Johnson, supervisor in our annuals and corporate department. And Kelsey Kilpatrick is going to be our chat manager today.
She will be manning that chat. So in some of the past compliance sessions, in all of the past compliance sessions, we've been sharing a bunch of the regulatory bulletins that have been coming out weekly, daily, hourly. We've shown you where to find them. We're going to show you again where to find them. We're not going to go over all of those updates because there's numerous ones. So Russ, if you'll just share our ILSA newsroom so that people can see where they can find those updates if they need them.
All right, so for those of you who have not been here before, this is on the ilsainc.com website. Our team does an amazing job of keeping everything posted and up to date. We have bulletins here before they make it onto the state website that issued it. So if you pop onto this site, this is under our newsroom, you'll see the bulletins on the side. You can have categories. You can, let's say that you want to know about Secretary of State bulletins. Click on there. It will show you just the most recent Secretary of State bulletins. If you want to use any of the tags on the right-hand side, COVID-19, cybersecurity, emergency regulations, just click on those and it will filter those to the bulletins that you need. Another handy thing that we have while you're stuck at home is if you do need to contact one of the regulators, most of them, as you'll hear later on, are at least working from home and they are responding to phone calls. You can click on your state and it will give you all the contact information for each of the departments that are relative to our industry. So that's a resource that's out there on our website. It's available for everybody.
Yeah, so like I said, we're not going to go over, all of the COVID-19 updates, but I understand, Sabrina, that you have one that you would like to share with us today.
Unless another one came in the meantime.
Yeah.
Yes, the Illinois Secretary of State, last week I announced that they were hoping to open their offices back up May 1st. They've actually extended that another month, so that Secretary of State office in the state of Illinois is closed until June 1st.
Are they taking phone calls at home?
I believe so. I know they're answering our emails. We've had to send in a few email requests, so I think they're working remotely from home, but if you've sent anything physically to the office, I know they haven't had a chance to get it.
Well, the next time that we have this, we'll see if we can contact them to see if we can get one of them to come on our next webinar and speak to us the next time you guys are on about this.
Okay.
So Sabrina, just to go back to that, on the Illinois Secretary of State, if you are submitting a corporate qualification electronically, you're able to submit it, right? It's just that you can't mail documents to them.
Correct, but the registrations, the certificate of authority applications, those are done by paper. Now, like annual returns and stuff like that, those you can file online.
Okay.
Some of the folks that couldn't join us today have sent in their questions to ccquestions@ilsainc.com. So Kelsey, can you start us off with the first one?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to start off with some of the questions that we get asked all the time, just to get the ball rolling. The first one is there a deadline to update the Department of Insurance of a corporate name change in any state where you currently hold a license? And if you don't notify them of the update by the deadline, are there any fines?
That is a very good question. There are deadlines to filing your name changes. You must notify the departments of insurance within 30 days of your resident name change. So let's take Texas. If you're a resident of Texas and you've already filed your name change at the domicile state, Texas, you file it at the Texas DOI, you then have 30 days to update all of the other departments of insurance that you've experienced a name change. And that, even though we're talking about corporate, that does affect individuals as well.
What about those fines? Do you know any off the top of your head?
To be honest with you, the fines can range anywhere from a simple warning to maybe $1,500 if you're talking about Florida. It just depends on the state, but you know, it can be, like I said, a simple warning to, you know, a couple $1,000s.
Are there any words that should be avoided when trying to choose a name?
I can kind of start off with that, especially at the Secretary of State level. Some of those words that you don't necessarily have to avoid, but you want to take under consideration, words like insurance. A lot of times those require Department of Insurance approval beforehand. So if you're going to file that name change with the Secretary of State, they're going to actually make you go back to the Department of Insurance and make sure that it's okay to use that name. Words like bank or banking, trust, financial, they're all words you can use, but you definitely want to take it into consideration because you may have to get prior approval from other regulatory bodies before they allow you to use it.
One thing to take in consideration is California. They don't have a restricted word per se, but insurance is a big word that they key off of. If you have insurance in your name, they're going to require you to have brokerages, services, group, following insurance. So, like I said, it's not a but I lost my train of thought.
It's not a word to necessarily avoid,
Yeah.
but if you do have insurance in the name, just kind of know that California specifically would want a descriptive word to follow that insurance.
What a team, you two.
Exactly. Yeah, my mind went blank. It was like,
I picked it up.
Wow.
right out the window.
From one grade to the other. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So guys, if you know of someone that wanted to attend today's session but couldn't, let them know that the replay can be found on YouTube on our Spot on Insurance channel. Especially if you got some questions and some answers that went by really fast, you can go over there and you can replay it and get your answer there. Next week, we'll be changing in the session a little bit. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we are going to do all upcoming sessions as webinars. Hopefully, this will eliminate some of the email issues and open this event to more people. We're working to get staff at the DOIs and Surplus Line Stamping Office to appear as guests to contribute on their respective states. So look for that in the future. We're making phone calls and we're trying to get them to come in. They oftentimes they're kind of camera shy, but I think we might be able to convince them to come on.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just so you guys know, that we'll continue to provide to the industry these weekly compliance sessions. It's kind of like, you know, we want to be able to share our resources. If you guys have any resources as well, we would love to, you know, hear about those. We want to take these so that we can support each other, and especially for us extroverts, see each other and feel connected as a community. I know, guys. I gotta be able to see people. So, just look for our notices. We'll be having another one next Thursday, May 7th, and we'll be telling you what the topic is and what experts we'll be having on the panel. So Kelsey, we'll go to you, our chat manager, with some more questions.
Yes. Are there any things that someone can do beforehand to save any headaches during this process of name changing?
Don't change your name. No, I'm joking, obviously. In the insurance industry, there's acquisitions, there's mergers, there's so you start up one company and you decide, oh, let's start up another one. So we know name changes are going to happen. It's a product. Yeah, it's inevitable. But there are some things to take in consideration when you dive off into the deep end and you have to change your name. So obviously, this is what the podcast or the webinar is for, name changes, and hopefully we can give you a little bit of pointers on how to make your name change process go a little smoother. So we'll start out with the elephant in the room, which is California, and then the other elephant in the room is New York. So speaking of the departments of insurance, if you have a name already and you're changing your name, so we'll use Joe Snuffy Insurance Agency. Joe, he decided to form a new entity, or he was acquired and they need to change his name. Some things to take in consideration is California. If you have insurance in your name, obviously we talked about this a little while ago, you're going to have a descriptive word, insurance followed by services, brokerage, agency, things to that nature, because the departments of insurance, especially California, they want to know that you're not an insurance company. They want that to be clear for any public viewing your license information or the way you display your business name. They want it to be clear that you're an agency, not a carrier. So that's an important process for changing your name, or when you're in the beginning and you're forming your company. Let's say you don't know exactly what you want your name to be. Shell out to California, shell out to New York, see if your name fits those criteria. If it doesn't, maybe you kind of work insurance services into your name. That'll definitely help with the process. So we were talking a little earlier about some of the quirkiness with California. Maybe instead of just getting set on one name, maybe you have 3 or 4 names that you might submit to the Department of Insurance to help with that process as well. They might disapprove 2 or 3 of them. The 4th try might be a winner. So definitely things to take into consideration.
Okay, so from the Secretary of State side, which I think we probably should have led with this a little bit. I know not everybody on here has been with us the last couple of weeks. Shame on you. No, I'm just kidding. But Tamika and I primarily work with the Department of Revenue and the Secretary of State. And Stephanie and Kristy, of course, work with the Department of Insurance. So anytime that either one of us answer either one of those questions, you can, just know that if we don't say it's coming from the Secretary of State and the Department of Revenue, and of course Kristy and Stephanie say it's coming from the Department of Insurance. So name changes at the Secretary of State level are actually pretty clear cut. It's not a very difficult or hard process. It's pretty straightforward. It's a lot of times it's just a matter of filing an amendment with the Secretary of State offices. Of course, the very first thing that you have to do before you can do anything, whether it's at the DOI or the SOS, is you have to change that in your domicile state. And once you have that filing, then you can go, of course, and file those in your foreign or non-resident states, whether that be at the DOI or the Secretary of State. So like I said, it's pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of following that amendment, showing the proof of documents from your domicile state that you actually made that change, and submitting those to the states.
So one thing to consider when you have formed your entity or changed your name is you're going to have to notify the Departments of Insurance, Secretary of States, once you have finalized that. So I mentioned a little earlier, you have 30 days to make those notifications. The Departments of Insurance are pretty set on that. They consider that a compliance requirement. So anytime that name change has been processed, you have to notify the Departments of Insurance. Don't let that fall through the cracks.
I will kind of tag on to that, Kristy, if you don't mind.
No, please go ahead.
At the Secretary of State level, you don't have like a ticking time bomb like you do with the Department of Insurance. They definitely, by all means, want you to make those notifications sooner rather than later. There's only a handful of states that I can think of that would even penalize you. So you're definitely going to see more of your penalties on the Department of Insurance side. You won't see very much on the Secretary of State side, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that there are definitely some differences there.
Yep. Just want to let you guys know, all the participants, if there's someone that has a specific question on one of the things that, you know, Kristy, Sabrina are mentioning, go ahead and unmute your mic or send Kelsey a question on the chat. I mean, we definitely will take, you know, interaction throughout the session.
Let me just give you guys a reminder that we do have our weekly podcast for those of us who just joined and may not know about it. Christian, will you share the screen? We've aired over 100 and we're up to about 163 episodes now. 164 is next week. And there are many centered around compliance, but they touch all areas of insurance. And our goal is to really inform and educate the industry. So you can find, if you're interested in changing jobs, you can go in there and find podcasts that we've done with recruiters and, you know, and helpful hints on how to prepare, things like that.
It's just such a good way to kind of broaden your insurance knowledge, because we have like InsurTechs, we have people that are working on AI. So, you know, back in the day when I started, I would say, Kristy will probably say that I started in 1905. Well, back then I used to read the newspaper. Now you don't have to read. You know, listening to podcasts is the new learning, the new reading. So definitely we have a lot of topics there. Like Ted said, a lot of them are centered around compliance, but not all of them are. You know, there's a good portion that are not. So it just kind of broadens your knowledge in terms of what's happening on the adjuster side, what's happening with on the life side. So it's a great way to get good knowledge.
I really liked this week's episode, which was about keeping insurance honest and some of the things that they're doing to prevent fraud in the insurance industry.
Yeah, that's pretty enlightening. Thanks, Christian. So we'll let you keep on, Kristy, on your, you know, corporate formations and all of the issues that we need to be aware of, which there's tons.
Oh yeah. Really quick, before we move on to the next category, another thing, to remember is whenever you do name changes in all your non-resident states or your foreign states, most states will want copies of your articles of amendment. So once you, of course, like we said earlier, Sabrina mentioned, you have to file that in your resident state and your domicile state first, and then just know that other states are going to need supporting documents to show that your name has been changed. Like you did step one first. So just kind of keep that in mind, save all your documents because you are going to need it in the future. So just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a good point.
Awesome.
Okay, so the next topic we're going to get into is changing your corporate structure. A lot of clients, when they go through this, they'll send us an email, say, hey, we've changed our name. Our name is now Joe Snuffy Inc. or Joe Snuffy LLC. They went from Inc. to LLC. Well, in our terms, that's not a name change. That's actual corporate structure change. It's handled a little different than a standard name change. For us, through the departments of insurance, it's a lot like a name change. We have to send in proof that the structure's been updated at the domicile state. We have to provide that documentation that it was changed at the resident state as well. For us, it's a lot like a name change, but again, it's a different process. Now, I know Sabrina can speak a little different to the process, so I'll turn it over to her.
It's a nightmare. No,
don't change your formation or don't change your structure.
No, it's definitely not as simple as filing at the Secretary of State where you just go in and file that amendment. That amendment is usually like a page 2. Hey, there in that one amendment form, you could change your name, your address, your officers, your RA. You could change about like 20 different things on that one form. And it's very, hey, click this box. I changed my name, straightforward. When you're doing a corporate structure change, it is not easy. It is not just one form, bam, you're done. A lot of times, depending on which state you're working with, it could be, okay, well, you need to file a conversion. You know, the next state that you're dealing with, you have to file a withdrawal and a conversion. The next state, you have to do a complete new, certificate of authority application. And then the next state, you have to do a combination of all 3 of those things. So it all just depends on, you have to do your research just like with any new task or new project that you take on. You have to reach out to those states. You have to know exactly what they want. You may have to call more than once because a lot of times you don't always get a straight answer. And of course, it's never easy peasy when you're trying to find those forms online. So do your research. Go ahead and find all the information that you think you could possibly need to know. Send a little extra if you think it'll help. You will need certified documents in some cases from the domicile showing that proof that you did file it in your domicile first if you're filing those corporate structures with your foreign entities as well. So some just want copies, some want certified documents. It's just a matter of knowing what they want, sending it to them. If a withdrawal is required, that's of course where the lovely Tamika will come in. That's where your issues with the Department of Revenue, if you haven't been filing those taxes and all that fun stuff, so I'll let her take that away.
Yeah, basically you have to.
Tamika, before you start that, I just want to interject for a minute because Sabrina threw a lot of stuff out there and she's just like throwing lingo, like everybody that's participating today knows all this lingo. We have people that are joining because they want to broaden their knowledge. So one of the things that you threw out there was RA. So if you can please explain what RA is.
I try not to use any acronyms. So the RA, of course, is your registered agent. That if you're filing amendments or if you're filing your name changes or corporate structures, if you're filling out those forms, of course, your registered agent is going to be listed on there. That's anybody that's in, say, a lot of times the principal agency can be the registered agent in their domicile because they typically have a physical presence in that state. A lot of those entities don't if they're doing business outside of those states. Now, maybe you have some branch offices around your domicile state. A lot of people will use a commercial registered agent because they don't have a physical presence there. And they use that so that if for whatever reason they are served with service of process, or maybe you have an annual return reminder or any kind of you didn't file your annual return or any kind of notice from the state, they'll send it directly to that. That state requires that someone physically accept that paperwork. So of course, if you don't have a physical presence there, then that's where you would appoint the registered agent.
And the other thing that she threw out there that I want to clarify, she said, you know, you could just go ahead and put a little extra in there. Now, she's talking about all the documents, like send certificate of authority, things like that, not extra as in extra money.
Oh, no, that won't do any good with the states.
No.
You would think it would, but it won't.
Excuse me, Sabrina, we have a question from Elaine. If you're licensed in multiple states, does it matter what order you submit the name changes?
Not at the Secretary of State. The main thing with that is you have to file that with the domicile first. Whether you're doing your licenses in the Department of Insurance, it doesn't matter, because a lot of those DOIs that require that up front for the licenses are they want that proof that you did it in your domicile state filing as well. So the very first thing that you're going to do is your domicile, and then all of your foreign registrations with the Secretary of State can be done from there. Now, Kristy and Stephanie, if y'all want to kind of tag on to that, once my Secretary of State domicile filing has been filed, I would assume you would need to do the resident state first.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, ours is the same way. We're going to need to do it in the resident state first. And then once it's done there, then we can move forward with the non-resident states, just because a lot of those states are going to require proof that was done at the resident state first. Otherwise, they won't even accept or even look at your application. So always start with your resident state first on the DOI side and your domicile state first at the SOS side.
Thank you.
So,
I just wanted forget. But we were talking about, like, you know, the Department of Revenue really briefly, if you have to do a withdrawal, tax clearances and stuff like that may come to play. But I did want to bring up this one example. We don't handle like your domicile registration in your home state if you're setting your company up, but we do have a client, and emphasizing again that it's not a name change when you're changing your corporate structure. You are changing like the end part of your name. Like this person went from an LLC to an LP, but they didn't do it in the correct way. And so right now in their home state, they have 2 active records, 2 active entities where there should have just been 1. And so there's going to be an expectation that both of these companies, that's one, is going to say it's going to be filing taxes and everything. So if you're doing any that setup, make sure that you're doing it the correct way. And just really briefly, we had another client, and this was for a foreign registration, but there were 2 companies. One bought out the other company, and then they were supposed to do a name change. But again, it was not done correctly. So what you end up having were 3 entities, 3 active records in the state of Texas where they should have merged and then renamed the surviving company. So just make sure that you understand that it's just not like, here, this is my new name when you're doing those organization changes.
It's very important to keep those in mind. Okay, our third topic is going to be DBAs. Now we know that's not a part of a name change, but we get a lot of requests for DBAs. So while it does play into the name, that's why we added it into this conversation. So for the departments of insurance, if you're using a DBA, you must let the departments of insurance that you're licensed in know that you're using this DBA. For us, most of the time you have to put it on your resident state first. You have to file with your resident state first, and then you file in your non-resident states. You must show proof that it's on your resident license. It's a fairly simple process, but again, you're going to want to make sure that your name, the DBA that you're using, does conform to any state requirements that might be out there, like California and New York. No, I'm just teasing. California, they don't necessarily track DBAs unless it's part of an acquisition. Then you must show that you've purchased this name as a part of the acquisition. You must show proof. So you get out kind of lucky with California there.
For once.
For once, yeah.
So the DBAs filed at the Secretary of State level, Those are pretty straightforward. A lot of times you're facing the same things that you have to do if you're filing a name change, such as like the name approval process from the Department of Insurance, if you're using the word insurance in the name. Some other things that you have to take into consideration, you know, one state will name it as a trade name, the next state's going to name it as a DBA name. There's a lot of different names.
Fictitious name.
Department of Insurance is the same.
Oh no, I said fictitious name.
Oh, fictitious. Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. So there's a lot of different names for it. So just keep that in mind. Just because it's named just a little bit different doesn't mean that the filing requirement has somehow gone away. You're still required to file those. Another little tidbit, a lot of times you can reach out to the Secretary of State and think, oh, okay, well, I called them. The Secretary of State told me I didn't have to file DBAs in those states. That may be true, but that doesn't mean that there's not a DBA counting filing requirement. So you definitely want to find out if that's the case as well. If that is, then you know, we'll just reach out to those counties and wherever you're doing business at. If you don't have a physical presence in there, you can use your registered agent's address there. They can accept that. So you can file those DBA filings at the county level as well, in conjunction with the Secretary of State's filings.
Sabrina, I have a question for you. So in Florida, would you have to file a DBA?
Florida?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, yes, you can file a DBA in the state of Florida. Yes, yes.
So if you're doing business across the entire state of Florida, and Florida has 66 counties, you have to file those in every single county?
That is not a county filing state. Florida, you can file it with the Secretary of State.
Oh, okay,
yes.
That's good.
You're good. You could. No, some of the, there's only like a handful, and I say handful in like 5 or 6 states. Kristy, what'd you say?
California is a county filing.
California, Delaware, Connecticut. Now you're gonna put me on the spot. North Carolina. I feel like I missed it. Georgia, Marietta. Georgia. Come on, speak up, Kelsey. We're gonna put you on the spot. Virginia, there you go. Actually, Virginia and the state of Texas no longer require county filings. Virginia just recently switched, and then Texas did last year, where they only require it to be filed at the Secretary of State. Virginia just in the last couple of months changed that to where they only require the filings to be done at the Secretary of State. So
that's good.
I have noticed that California seems to be at the top of every list.
It always is.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that when you're filing those DBAs, especially on the Secretary of State side, there may be publication requirements, and you have to publicly announce that, hey, I'm doing business. This is the name of my business. This is the name that I plan on using. This is the DBA that I'm going to be using in this state. This is the address that I'll be doing that business at, and it has to run consecutive for like. Every requirement is a little different. It's like 3 to 4 weeks, but it has to run consecutively for 3 to 4 weeks. So each of those states do have those requirements that even with a DBA filing, you do have to file a publication as well.
I just wanted to bring up 2 really quick things. Like, if the Secretary of State doesn't allow you to use your legal name and they force you to use a different name, that's not the same thing as a DBA. That just means that you can't use your legal name there. And also, if you do register your DBA with Secretary of State, some Secretary of States do require that you renew it. So if you don't go in there and you don't renew it within however long, 2 years, 5 years, however long the requirement is, you're going to lose that trade name. You're going to lose it.
Yep.
So Tamika, back to that point, which was a really good point. If you're forced to use a name, like let's say you try to get name approval and you find out that there's a similar name and you can't get a consent of use of name, and now you're forced to use another name and it's not a DBA, right? Do you have to use that name now in other states?
No. You're only required to use it in that state.
Okay. Good to know. So now that's another name that you have to keep track of.
Yes, California and New York are two of those guilty parties.
Okay, before we go on to your next topic, Kristy, I would like to take this time to just, I know that there's some folks here that are on the surplus line side. So if you guys know of surplus lines brokers or processors that are at home, well, everyone should be home, or there's very limited people that are at the office, but I mean, there's some CSRs that are at the office.
In California, they're at the beach.
They closed the beach.
They closed them, yep.
But anyway, I wanted to make you aware of something that we launched at the beginning of this month, April 1st, which is our surplus lines tax calculator online. I would love, Russ, if you will just show where that's at, so that this is if you guys know of anyone that's at home doing surplus lines tax filings and processing, that they know that this resource is there. So Russ, if you'll just talk a little bit about it.
Sure thing. This is something our surplus lines clients have been on us for years to come up with something like this. And so we finished this up and launched it. And as Arleen said, at the 1st of April, it's a great tool. It's available. The information on it is available on our website under the resource page. Tell you everything it does. There's a little video that our marketing folks put together that really kind of highlights all of the features of it. But basically, it's more than just a tax calculator. It will do all sorts of things for you. It's got the state stamps, the required forms, special instructions. You can do your eligible insurers through here. It'll even tell you how the state wants their money when you pay them. So it's a great tool. If you're not an ILSA client, all of our clients have access to this through our surplus lines portal. But if you want to use it and you're not interested in becoming an ILSA client, we're actually offering it for subscription. You can get to that a free trial here on the website. Since everybody's stuck at home, we'll give you 60 days free to play with it, see if it's something that can help you. It's a great tool to have when you're binding policies, so you know how much tax to charge your insured. So it's out there, it's available. We'd love for people to try it and give us some feedback on it. Tell us what they think.
Awesome. So again, if you know of someone that has that job, share it with them. They will thank you. They'll probably send you a really nice Christmas gift. So go ahead, Kristy. What else we got in store?
Well, really quick, I'd like to add something about the DBAs, just because we see it come up all the time. But if you're snuffy insurance agency and you happen to acquire a whole bunch of other entities, so now you have to add those names as your DBA, just something to keep in mind is you'll have to cancel the licenses that agency once held before you can add it as a DBA, because departments of insurance won't release that name to be added as a DBA until you properly cancel those licenses that were once under that name. So I just wanted to throw that out there, because sometimes we have clients come in and they'll ask us, well, why is this an issue, or why do we have to do this? And so that's just something that kind of people don't always remember. So I wanted to throw it out there before we moved on to the questions.
Yeah, a lot of times our clients will come, or Joe Snuffy will come to us and he doesn't want to cancel those licenses. He wants to let them run off, let them expire on their own. But we have to tell them, look, you've got to cancel these licenses to release that name in those departments of insurance. So thank you. That's a very good point.
So Kelsey, let's go to you and check out 3 other questions that have gotten submitted, because we want to make sure that we're answering those questions.
Absolutely. Our first question is, does our DBA need to be filed with every Secretary of State office that we're registered in?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What about the Department of Insurance? Sorry.
Well, hold on. From the DBA, not all states actually, I could have sworn you said name changes. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. DBAs, not all states have a DBA filing requirement. Some states just truly don't have one. The majority of them do and can be filed, whether online, via paper, or whatever, with the Secretary of State office, and then that handful, like I mentioned earlier, with county filings where you have to file where the county you're doing business in.
For the departments of insurance, it's along the same lines. Not all departments of insurance track or care about the DBA. If it is a state that requires it, you do have to notify them of a DBA. Some will let you use more than one DBA. As we mentioned, Joe Snuffy's buying up these insurance agencies. For every DBA or every acquisition, if he needs to add those on his license, some states will let you add more than one. But yes, for the most part, if it's a requirement, you've got to notify the departments of insurance that you have a DBA.
Hey, Kristy, does the DOIs have any kind of limits on the amount of DBAs that you can issue?
Yeah, some do.
States, yeah.
Some do. I know at the Secretary of State, we don't. I've never come across that. We've filed away. We have, I have several DBA clients that, I mean, we're talking multiples, like more than 15 DBAs that we file on them, and I haven't come across that. So I was wondering if you had that at the DOI.
Yes. Yeah, we have several that they only track one DBA. And so if that is the requirement at that state, then if you are doing business under more than one DBA, they only require you to notify them of one. I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of states, they don't have a way to, they have character limits, so they only have a way to show or display one DBA. So that's kind of where that comes from.
I have a question for you, Stephanie and Kristy, related to the DBAs. Does it ever present a problem with the insurance companies? So all of a sudden, they have an agency contract under XYZ or Snuffy Insurance Agency, and now Snuffy is, I don't know, whatever he wants to call it, Snooty Snuffy.
Yeah.
Do the carriers ever have a problem with that?
I would say yes. We do have a client right now. Every time they purchase or acquire an entity, they have to roll that entity name up underneath their contract. So when, let's say, the business from Arkansas comes in, it pushes through the carrier, and they'll say that, Caroline Snuffy Insurance Agency, oh, it's under Joe Snuffy's Insurance Agency's account, and that's the DBA, so they'll push it through.
That's usually when, Kristy and Stephanie's team and we work together the most, is whenever those insurance carriers are knocking on the door and they're like, hey, I need this done like yesterday. Yeah, we're real BFFs then.
Yep. So I just want to pause for a minute. Joe Snuffy and Snuffy Insurance Agencies don't exist. He's been my test client. So I was in the military, and that was one of those names that, was just thrown out there. So when I came here, that was Joe Snuffy Insurance Agency. So please don't think we're trying to out any clients or anything like that. He's our test subject. All right, back to you, Kelsey.
Does our DBA need to be on every state insurance license, or only the states where we use the DBA?
No. Okay, so back up. So Caroline Snuffy, she's only in Arkansas. So Joe Snuffy can add that DBA in Arkansas. So Caroline Snuffy Agency can do business as Caroline Snuffy Agency in Arkansas. So the parent company doesn't have to have it in all 50 states or in those states, but most definitely where that acquisition is residing in, for sure.
And what documents need to be amended in changing our name? For example, E&O and bond writers.
So again, well, you want to take this?
No, go ahead. Oh. You're rocking and rolling. No, don't stop it. Go.
I don't want to take control.
No, you take it.
So yes, for the departments of insurance, E&O, 100% for Texas. If you change your name, if you add a branch registration, if you add a DBA, Texas is going to want that E&O amended to show all of that new information. If you have bonds for California, you know, New York, their retaliatory bonds, those bonds have to be amended to show the new entity name. We call it a rider because you're adding on to the existing bond. Your bond company may not issue a new bond until it renews. And in that case, they send us a rider, we send it to the departments of insurance. That's a very good question. We don't get that a lot, but it is something that comes up quite a bit.
And on more towards the Secretary of State side, when converting from an LLC to an Inc., what change must take place first to the agency?
As mentioned before, the very first thing that you can do when making a name change, DBA, anything like that, you have to file it at the domicile level first. That's your first foremost thing that you have to do. If you go and try to file that at the foreign states, some,
You got the next question.
I mean, maybe a few might go ahead and issue it, but the majority of them are not. They're going to require those certified documents or at least copies of those certified documents. So that they can see proof that the domicile had made that change first.
Very good. And Kristy, you want to take back your agenda and the things that you want to cover?
Oh, well, we're actually to the bonus section. So
Bonus round.
the bonus round.
Wow.
So,
what are we doing during our bonus round?
Yeah. So one thing that we get a lot, okay, not a lot, but we do get them, is clients that decide to change their tax ID. Again, it comes along with an acquisition. Let's say Joe Snuffy Insurance Agency, he has the licenses. He's acquired by XYZ Inc. XYZ doesn't want the licenses, so they'll ask us to take the tax ID or take the name Joe Snuffy Insurance Agency and put it on that tax ID, and we can't do that. What happens is when you submit those applications to the departments of insurance, your name and that tax ID is linked together. So the departments of insurance are going to make you cancel your licenses and reapply for licenses for XYZ Insurance Agency and have those licenses in place for that entity. So we get that quite a bit. We thought it'd be bonus material that we could bring in here and talk about. Like I said, it's not that common, but I've been here for like 105 years now, and I've seen it quite a few times. And a lot of times our clients are already in the process of it and they don't realize what a mistake they're making because they don't realize all the requirements from the DOI. They're only looking at it from one dimension, which is we've been acquired, or, you know, we've acquired this company and this is what we want to do, not realizing that it's not possible.
And we have another question. It's how can you avoid name approval hassles before starting the process, if there's any way to check?
Name approval. You want to take this? Well, go ahead. Okay. The name approval process, again, shell out to California's website, look at those naming conventions. If you decide to use insurance in your name, be sure to add services, brokerage, those descriptive words to that name, and then that makes the process go a whole lot easier, simplified for when you want to go actually add those names to your license or get licensed in that name.
Okay, so Lisa, I believe, asked the question like before, like the name approval. That's with the Secretary of State when you're doing those like name changes. A lot of times when you're making that name change, they want the true name regardless of any other requirements. Now, if you're in California or New York or one of those states that require the name approval, then of course you're going to still have to get that. But like, I know before, we know that California has those issues where at the Department of Insurance, they have those very restricted, like it has to follow these guidelines. So if you're trying to file that, you're not going to be able to have that proof at the Secretary of State level, because in that sense, California Secretary of State doesn't want, you know, a fictitious name, or it doesn't have to meet the DOI's requirements. They want your true physical name. So when we're making that change in California, there would be no list of the fictitious name on the Secretary of State, because what you're doing is you're changing the true. They don't care about the other name. They want to know what is it truly in your domicile state. So we would make that change.
And Elaine brought up a good point, that is, most Secretary of State websites have business lookups. So you could search to see if the name was available.
That is true. We actually do that. I know on the Secretary of State side, whether you're doing name changes or DBAs or anything like that, we actually do it for part of the process when we're doing just an original certificate of authority application. Because, you know, there might be somebody, especially if it's like initials or acronyms, or like M&M Insurance, you know, or Smith Insurance, or Wilson, or one of those states, or one of those names that has, you know, there's going to be 50 other Smiths in that state. The likelihood of you getting Smith Insurance Agency Inc. is very, very low. So we actually do that. And when we find that, okay, we put in Smith Insurance Agency, we pull it up, and there's 3 other entities that are, you know, variations of that name, we'll tell our clients, hey, you're going to have to give me some other, you know, options to use. Kind of like what you do with California whenever you submit to the DOI and you have 5 different selections. We kind of do that as well with all the states. Hey, look, in these states, it's probably not going to go through. Give me options. What else can I submit? Because a lot of times, especially with our applications, they're electronic applications. We can put that name in and it'll tell you right then and there, oh, nope, we're not going to accept that. Now, of course, in paper applications, you get a fun little rejection. That stinks. That's why we name approval lookup, or not name lookup, but like that business entity lookup, just to see if it's already taken. But at least for the electronic apps, that's a really nice tool that a lot of the states have implemented. They put that in place where it'll tell you, okay, this name isn't available.
And again, guys, you can actually go to our website, ILSAinc.com. We have a state regulators contact information lookup where you can actually do the search right there and look up that name. So now we would love to, if you guys have additional questions, if you think of things throughout the week, go ahead and send us questions. You can also call our compliance team at 254-729-8002 and just ask whatever questions, you know, we're here to help you guys. Anyone that has questions right now, we're welcoming you to unmute your mic if you just want to say hello, tell us how things are in Atlanta, in North Dakota, wherever you are. Cheryl Joe, I am so happy to see you again. And for those of you that do not have your cameras on, I hate not seeing you guys. Please, next time, have cameras so that we can see you guys. But go ahead and unmute. I see that RY's unmuted, so you must have a question or want to share something with us.
Nope. Oh, let me, we've got about 7 minutes left on this. We want to make sure we finish on time. And also, this virtual beach is giving me a real suntan.
We see that. We see the
I'm
sun.
like on fire halfway on my face. I'm like, this is virtual.
Very cool.
So, like Arleen says, she's inviting you to join the conversation. Anything you might have to add now, please do so. If not, we will call the meeting.
Cheryl Joe, hi. Your puppy is so cute. Lisa loves your puppy. Or no, Elaine loves your puppy.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you guys for joining us this week. Look forward to another one next week. Hopefully by next week we're going to have
we have
some members of the URI.
hang on a second.
from
SB, I don't know, SB Elizabeth. She says, thank you so much. Best regards from San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Well, we're here in Humacao, Puerto Rico.
Hi, it's Cheryl. Just saying hello to everyone from Atlanta.
Hi,
Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Cheryl,
Thank you.
how's that?
You guys saw my puppy. He made his debut, I guess. And
Yeah.
Cheryl, how's Atlanta this week?
it's actually pretty good. We had rain today. The temperature is just on a roller coaster. Going to be in the mid 80s by the weekend. But today, I think it's around 60s or so. We're just up and down in the temperature.
And
But,
what's the latest on COVID over there?
a lot of controversy still. You know, Governor Kemp has reopened the state, but people, not everyone's on board with that. So even though the state has been reopened, a lot of people are still going by their shelter-in-place preference. So it's headlines on the news every night here. I mean, people are saying the governor's taken funding over people, and even the type of businesses that he's reopened, people are questioning that, and it's not going smoothly at all. I can say that.
I am so excited I get to go back to Ross. That's a department store.
Oh yeah.
I've been going through DTs, not being able to go to Ross.
Okay, but Kristy, just keep in mind that the headlines today were saying that Europe is like, can't believe that the US is opening stuff up at this time.
Right.
See, I was in the military and I've had all these inoculations anyway, so I'm good.
Oh, but remember, it's not about
Oh, and ginger and lemon.
Oh.
So
That looks really good.
I'm immune. No, I'm teasing. But I am excited about going back to Ross. So what I do is I go in the store and I get what I need and I come out and I immediately sanitize my hands before I even get in the truck. So.
Well, you still planning to wear a mask, right?
I don't wear a mask, no. No.
Gosh.
Well, here
I told you I'm immune, so I don't need to wear a mask. No.
in Puerto Rico, we are required to wear a mask, and they even take our temperature before we go into the supermarket.
Wow.
They give us gloves.
They've done a really good job.
They've done a great
Yeah.
job.
You guys, my neighbor told me that type O blood people.
Oh yeah, I'm O2.
Have you heard that?
Yes. And yeah.
Okay.
But I
I'm
have
type O, actually.
Negative.
Yeah.
So what happens with type
So,
O?
like,
Yeah,
that's why I feel like I'm immune, because I've got all this stuff going for me.
Okay. I can agree with that.
Type O has usually if you have type O, if you do get it, you will have a less hard time with it. That you will. Most asymptomatic people seem to be type O, but if you're type A, it seems to hit people with type A very hard.
What's your blood type?
I'm right there with you, Stephanie. Don't you worry.
I was like, she's sitting beside me. No,
Oh, stories.
Unfortunately, this is causing like a blood shortage. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I thought about giving blood too. You know, every
should,
time
you
they
should,
come
yeah.
down here, they always blow my vein. So as soon as they come in, I'm running the other direction. But I actually thought about going to Carter
yeah.
in Waco and seeing if they would, like my blood. Cause
Yeah, they're calling like every other day, please, please, please. So
Exactly right. They
especially
call
if
me.
you're because you're a universal donor. So yeah.
Exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah.
So guys, we're going to be sending out notices on the topic. You guys know it'll be next Thursday, same time. Again, if you know of people that, can use this and, can definitely gain value, share it with them. Next week, like Ted said, it's going to be a webinar format, so we're not going to have all the logistical nightmares that we've had behind the scenes with the emails and all of that. You know, like every time after we finish the sessions, we get people sending us messages saying, we never got the meeting ID. And I feel horrible about that. So
yeah, it's not that the meeting ID wasn't sent, it was sent, but it's lost somewhere.
yeah, we've been.
So we're trying to fix that. So.
Yeah, because a lot of our emails have been going to junk, and so, or not going through. So definitely next week it'll be a different way. It'll be a webinar, so we'll see how those notifications will go out. Thank you so much, my peoples. Have a good rest of the week.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.